I'm Esther Lee. I'm the president and CEO of Refraction, which is a nonprofit innovation hub that provides mentoring and programming and workspace for startups and entrepreneurs. I was privileged to serve in the Obama administration as the director of the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, where we launched Startup America, focused on what the government can do to better assist entrepreneurs all throughout the US. And then after that, I served as Virginia Secretary of Commerce. Helping entrepreneurs create jobs has been my passion for a number of years. And as we all know, in the last 20 to 30 years, all net new jobs in this country were created by startups. So happy to be doing this work. So having spent some time in the federal government, there are a lot of resources that unfortunately not everyone knows about. And I highly recommend that new entrepreneurs go check out sba.gov. But some of the ones that as I mentioned, small business development centers, women small business centers, veteran small business centers that are specific to those groups. There are training programs for specific groups of entrepreneurs. Obviously, there are SBA loans and grants. I will also point to SBIR and STTR grants that if you qualify for, usually based on research that that companies are doing, whether university or others, they're eligible for grant funding from the government. And there's a lot more information you can get at from CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology, that holds some seminars on helping companies apply for those grants. There are also procurement technical assistance centers for companies that want to sell to the federal government that help you figure that out. It's not an easy process. There are U.S. export assistance centers that help companies that want to export. So there are a number of resources that, again, I would send them to sba.gov to learn more about. Being an entrepreneur is not for everyone, and it's tough and takes a lot of work, and it's 24/7, as we all know. I think that successful entrepreneurs surround themselves with great mentors and advisors, right? Many startups have a board of advisors that are either experts in their sectors, have great relationships that they can leverage to help open doors. But I think having great mentors is key. I think being disciplined and focused, right? We all know Amazon started as a bookstore. My understanding is Jeff Bezos knew early on that he wanted to sell a lot more than books. And in fact, today, the world's largest store in the world. But he started by focusing. And I think a lot of startups make the mistake of trying to be something to, everything to everyone, and not focusing enough on executing and delivering on a more focused scope before they expand. Obviously getting enough funding up front, which is always hard, but enough funding so you're not fundraising all the time, I think is important. We know that fundraising is a very time-consuming activity, and I think not underestimating how much you need to get the company off the ground is important. And I would say, entrepreneurs know they have to hustle, they have to network, whether it's leveraging your college alumni network, your local networks, your neighbors, being resourceful. There's actually a ton of talent in our region, as you know. When I was Secretary of Commerce for Virginia, we told Amazon when they were looking at where to place HQ2, that we have more digital tech degrees in this region than any other region in the United States. That includes Silicon Valley, Boston, and places like that. And so the good news is there's a lot of great talent in this region that entrepreneurs need to tap into and to leverage. And I would say a great way to do that is to join an organization like Refraction, and so you can plug into the ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Aberman. I'm currently the Dean of the College of Business Ideation, Leadership, and Technology here at Marymount University. I think I'm more widely known for being the founder of Amplifier Ventures and also my consulting business, Amplifier Advisors. Over the years, I've educated more than 2,000 students in various universities around entrepreneurship. I've helped start 20 technology companies, I've advised every governor since Governor Warner on innovation policy. I've served on the board of the Center for Innovative Technology and various other organizations around the state. I care about entrepreneurship deeply. I care about technology deeply. I think our future as a region depends upon our successful entrepreneurship. So I'm really glad that you're going to take the opportunity to learn from me and the other experts as part of this video series. The largest angel investor for entrepreneurs in our region is the federal government by a huge factor. Most of that money comes in two ways. It comes through federal research and development contracts. Agencies will actually give small businesses money to develop technology, or through the Small Business Innovative Research programs. The SBIR program generates hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a year of funding to help startups build new technologies that would be of importance to the federal establishment. Most of the technology businesses that start in our region actually start with SBIRs, or federal R&D funding. Many of the companies that we're most familiar with nationally started with federal funding. For example, Qualcomm, which is a chip company that's inside many cell phones, was started by federal money. iRobot, that little robot that runs around your home and keeps it clean, was funded initially by federal money. Siri, the next time you get angry at Siri, remember the Department of Defense financed the research that created a talking computer. So if you are serious about a technology business, you should know about federal R&D spending and SBIRs. I think the most important thing for any entrepreneur who's looking for success is to achieve product market fit. You know, over the years, I've taught a lot of people how to be successful entrepreneurs, and I often ask them, where does growth come from? And a lot of them will scratch their heads and give me some theoretical answer. You know where growth comes from? I'll say, growth comes from more people wanting what you have to sell than you currently have available. It's really very simple. If more people want what you can give them than you currently can provide, that's where growth comes from. Well, that never changes. Whether you're looking for your first customer or you're looking for your millionth customer, you have to have demand. So any entrepreneur journey has to begin with a very strong analysis of why the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur's team can do something that customers are going to care about. Once you have that, then it becomes a function of building the various other resources you need to deliver against the demand. And that's where access to really strong service providers are very important. I've rarely seen a successful entrepreneur not have a really, really good relationship with a highly connected, agile lawyer and a really good accountant. We often deride service providers, I guess, in some ways, as an entrepreneur community, and say, well, they're not taking risks like I am. Maybe so, but they're going to understand how the ecosystem works and how the rules of the road function in a way that, frankly, every entrepreneur needs to understand. I think that having a good relationship with other entrepreneurs is also very important. So being part of a networking organizations like the Northern Virginia Chamber, for example, if you're here in Northern Virginia, is very important because we learn through others and we develop our businesses by gathering resources, which often we can find through partnerships. Point ultimately is entrepreneurship is a journey that's personal. I've never seen an entrepreneur who was successful who didn't enjoy the ride. In fact, if you want to be an entrepreneur because you want to be rich, I would encourage you to take a moment and take a deep breath. Entrepreneurs can't always guarantee if they're going to be rich, but they like the journey. So if you like the journey and you like people and you have product market fit, those are the most important things for any successful entrepreneur. One of the $1 million or $1 billion questions that many ask around entrepreneurship is, can you actually teach somebody to be an entrepreneur? A lot of people argue about this. I can tell you from my perspective, having been involved as an investor and as a founder in more than 20 startups, and now being the dean of one of our region's fastest growing business technology programs, I can tell you that you can't teach somebody how to have an entrepreneurial personality. But what you can do is you can give them the skills necessary to identify whether or not they have an entrepreneurial personality, and also the skills necessary to execute against that vision. So What makes somebody entrepreneurial? Well, in my experience, entrepreneurial people tend to be pretty optimistic. They tend to be very tolerant of ambiguity. They tend to believe that through their own efforts, they can make the world around them bend to their will. They tend to be self-starters, and they tend to fail upwards, meaning that when they're faced with adversity, they find a way to turn it into their next opportunity. If you have more than one of those characteristics, you probably have an entrepreneurial character. So if you have an entrepreneurial character, what skills do you need to succeed? Without question, the most important skill is the ability to generate good analysis of product market fit. Think about an idea and look at the marketplace and see whether or not you're actually going to satisfy demand. And then figure out what's necessary to build a value chain, the process of taking raw materials, and whether it's labor or physical raw materials, and converting them into the thing you want to sell. Those are all skills, along with marketing, strategic analysis, developing culture. These are all things that can be taught either in a university setting, in a great business technology program, or in various other educational programs that are offered around a region, depending upon what your level of interest is. The key to all this, though, is to understand that entrepreneurial people tend to be sponges. They're very curious. They're always interested in learning more. This region has so many avenues available to people who want to learn more about the journey that it's really a function of how and where they want to spend their time. Years ago, when I was thinking about starting Amplifier Ventures, a very close friend of mine who was one of the leaders of AOL sat me down and he asked me why I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I looked at him and I thought it was a trick question. And I said, well, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to be rich. And he looked at me and he shrugged, kind of laughed, and he said, that's completely the wrong answer. You better think of a better one. And I thought that was really strange. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? What's more important to an entrepreneur getting rich? And he said to me, you know what? You can't control whether or not your entrepreneurial activity is going to make you rich. There is so much luck that separates a great business from a business that sells. You're not going to be able to control that. You can try, but you're not going to be able to control for luck. So you're going to have to like the journey. If you find being an entrepreneur is enriching for you, if you enjoy the journey, do it. If your only reason for doing it is to get rich, go to Vegas and play blackjack. And the other thing you said to me was, you'll know you're an entrepreneur when you're failing and you're still happy. And at the time, I thought that was the most ridiculous advice I'd ever heard anybody give me. And I started Amplifier Ventures. And 6 or so months after I started, I faced a significant fork in the road. And I was looking at failure. I was looking at being unable to raise my first fund. And I realized at that moment, as hard as it was and as unhappy as I was still happy because it was a mess, but it was my mess. And I realized then that the advice my friend had given me was very apt. And it drove me forward through that crisis. And it's driven me, well, for the last 17 years, as I moved away from being a service provider and a venture capital lawyer to a VC and now doing the things I'm doing today. So my best advice to you as an entrepreneur is look in your heart and enjoy the journey. Enjoy the ups and downs, enjoy being in charge, enjoy the randomness, enjoy the ambiguity, because that ultimately is the thing that you can control. And I wish you the best with it. And I hope that 20 years from now, you're not shaking your fist at me, telling me that I was wrong, but I've got a feeling I'm right.
My name is Tian Wong. I'm chairman and CEO of Opus 8. Opus 8 is a company which invests directly in early stage companies, and we also help alternative investment managers and early stage companies raise capital through our network of investors. I'm also the founder of Connectpreneur Community, which is a global community of over 20,000 investors, VCs, entrepreneurs, founders, and other business leaders, mostly on the East Coast, but around the world. All right, well, I think the federal government has a number of different programs. There's a set of non-dilutive financing tools as well as other types. For example, the CIA has a venture capital fund called Inkitel. The SBA has a series of grants, and also there's a variety of business development corporations that make investments in loans. using SBA funding or matching funding into early stage companies. The DoD, the NIH, lots of money for cool ideas and inventions. SBIR grants are something you should look into. Again, that's money that is allocated by the government to the private sector for amazing ideas and technology that could have some potential application down the road. August is a website for companies that are trying to raise money and also for investors who want to invest money. So much like AngelList used to be, August has been around for many years, and it's a place where companies who are looking to raise money will list their information on the site, and then a registered investor member, such as myself, I have a Gust account. I would go on Gust and I would look for opportunities that I would be interested in investing in. So a company can do its research on Gust and figure out, which investors have been investing in what companies, and do some homework that way to figure out if there's some people that they can be calling on. Yeah, I think the first and most important thing is to focus on the customer, because without a customer, you don't have a business. So when I say focus on the customer, I'm talking about solving their pain. What is the customer's exact pain point, and what is your solution or product that can fix this pain point? And really going deep and trying to understand, how the customer adopts your product. I think that's absolutely critical. I see a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs get too enamored with their technology without understanding what the market really, really wants. So I think understanding what the market really wants and giving to them in spades is critical. The other thing I would say is focus. You want to focus on a couple of key things. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to do too many things. Again, if you build your business around the customer and build your product and your team around the customer, then I think you increase your chances for long-term success.
My name is April Young. I'm a managing director at Hercules Capital, which is a publicly traded BDC traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We specialize in lending money to growth companies with venture backing to help them grow. My background, I spent the first 30 years of my career doing economic development. I was recruited here in the early 80s to run the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. After that, I did some stints in the construction industry with NVR, ultimately ran the state's program for Doug Wilder, and then went to George Mason University as a fellow to work on regional economic growth. In the late 1990s, I became a banker and have been a banker to venture-backed companies ever since. I think the first is to understand the market they're going after and how hard it's going to be to break into it. The most successful entrepreneurs typically have identified a market that is underserved or wrongly served in some fashion. If you look at a company like Uber, the taxi companies, the individual taxi companies had many times basically a monopolistic position in a market, and were very specific in the way they did their business. Whereas Uber decided that there was a market for individual personal transportation that could be met by other than, if you will, a corporate solution. Anyone who's been watching knows of it as the gig economy, which is finding alternative ways to put people to work to meet other needs. Airbnbs, also that kind of example where they were essentially disintermediating the existing hotel industry, the existing transportation industry, because the entrepreneur figured out that there was something about the way the problem was being met that wasn't really satisfying the demand. One of my favorite companies right now is Beyond Meat. This is a company that figured out that you could make meat out of plant products, and meat's a need that people have for reducing the amount of red meat they eat. The jury's still out, but basically, I think the most successful entrepreneurs have figured out that there's a need for a service or a product that's not being met, and figure out a good way to do it. Sometimes the solution is too complicated. In the early days of cyber, a lot of the cyber companies we looked at had very, very complex solutions, which were hard to explain to the buyers and probably more than the buyers thought they needed. So that was tough. Sometimes, it's too expensive. We talk a lot about TAM, which is total addressable market. Sometimes entrepreneurs have come up with a product that's got a very small market and there's somebody already in it that owns a lot of it and can be very expensive. So trying to figure out the cost of selling, how hard and how expensive it is to sell the product. Once you figured out who might buy it, it's tough. In this region, we actually have a wonderful asset, which is the federal government. And a lot of entrepreneurs start out with a product that the government needs, that some agency needs, some part of the government needs. And once they sold it to the government and kind of tried it out, then they can see if there's a commercial solution. So we see a lot of our technology companies have kind of two parts of their business, one the public sector business and then the private sector business. So, I think the key is who's going to buy it and why would they buy it and how much are they going to pay for it? Sometimes the product just doesn't work, or the product has missed the market. I had one company that was doing extremely well, but somehow just missed the shift to mobile devices. They were a hardware product that the whole process moved to the web. So sometimes, you outgrow your market, you fail to adapt to the market. Sometimes, people invest in the wrong thing or the wrong people. A lot of companies that fail, I think it's often because the team isn't up to the task. The people at Tatum have done a lot of work on growing past certain revenue levels. And it's really interesting to watch companies who are at 10 million in revenue try to get to 20 and 50 and 200. And it takes different things. So I guess I would say it's a combination. They've missed the market, product doesn't really work. Somebody comes along who does it fast, better, faster, cheaper. Any number of, if I were that smart, I'd be a zillionaire, but, trying to figure it out is just, it's really trying to understand where your market is and whether you can afford to get to it. It dawned on me a minute ago that for an early stage entrepreneur, the National Venture Capital Association has a site that's free that has a variety of model documents. Probably the biggest, most common mistake angel companies make is giving away too much of the company too early. Although the other side is wanting too much money for too little and not being able to find that balance, but finding good documents. There are wonderful law firms here, the Cooley guys, the DLA Piper guys. There are others. I'm gonna annoy any number of people by not mentioning them, but there are great lawyers in the region, great accountants, the major accounting firms. There are a lot of resources in the region that will help an entrepreneur just out of the goodness of their hearts. They hope someday they'll be public companies. I've been involved in a program called Mindshare for 20 plus years. We offer a kind of a CEO roundtable for first-time tech CEOs. It's a great opportunity to meet other people who are doing what you're doing and get a little further on. So there's a Halcyon. There are there are really half a dozen organizations that have been set up to help. George Mason's has a center that I used to be involved in. There are, the local universities are very interested in being available and helpful to entrepreneurs. So I think, it's really just doing your homework, just, and asking around, asking somebody who's an entrepreneur, where'd they get help? I talk to, we don't do early stuff anymore, but I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and just, give them access to my network as much as I can. And I'm just typical of people who are really interested in entrepreneurship.